Okay, I'm okay now.
Okay, let's pray together. Dear Father, we're so grateful for this time we can gather. Thank you for this place. Thank you for all that you've provided so that we can gather as a family of God to worship you, to praise you, to think about what you have done for us. As we look forward to Easter especially, we thank you for sending your son Jesus to come, to live among us, to live a life like our lives, and die on the cross for our sins. Help us to always remember that, not just Easter, but every day of our lives till we see you again. Lord, help us to also know how to share that wonderful truth that you have died on the cross for us. With our friends, our family, the more we come to know that you are the Lord of this world, and you're the only hope for all of us, for any human being. Lord, we give this time to you in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen. So the hope of the resurrection, I think it's a very important topic because after all, it is a hope that we all need. And I think the clicker is not moving again. Okay, we tried to yeah, thank you. So, okay, so yeah,
Okay, it's okay.
Yeah.
Or
Thank you. Yeah, so as we're just reading, right, this is the living hope that we need that comes through the resurrection, that we're going to have an inheritance that will not be corrupted in heaven. We don't need that because the death is a certainty. We don't like to talk about it, but the reality is everybody dies. There was an interesting article in the Time magazine just over 10 years ago now, September of 2013. Can Google solve that? Yeah, can Google solve that? Apparently, yeah, so these are the founders of Google. I think they've sort of moved on from Google now. They're no longer in charge of the company. But anyway, at that time, I mean, they're the most powerful people, right? They have one of the biggest companies, right? Very rich, and they decided that they want to solve this problem of death. So you see, because no matter how powerful you are, no matter how rich you are, you still die. Right? So they enlisted Arthur Levinson, who's he's actually also the chairman of the board of Apple, and he served as director at Google. So again, high-powered corporate individual, and he was selected to be the CEO of this new company called Callisto. So the idea was they found this company, right? They have all the money in the world, right? They can find the best people, and their idea was they want to solve that. This is the company's goal. Callisto's ultimate goal will be to extend the average human lifespan by 20 to 100 years. Now, by the way, even if you could do that, right? Extend human life by 20 to 100 years, you haven't solved that. So it's been more than 10 years now. Did we extend our lifespan by 20 to 100 years? No, it hasn't happened, right? It's a lot harder than we think. Now, why is it so hard? Why is that such a tough nut to crack? Even Google can do it. Well, this is from the U.S. National Institute of Health. These are the factors that contribute to lifespan. Your genes, your environment, your behavior, right? Now we can change our behavior. You don't want to do dangerous things. Dangerous things cause you to die, right? You can change your environment, right? You try to live in a safer environment. You can try to stay away from dangerous chemicals. Like don't smoke, so that don't damage your lungs and things like that. But it's not that easy to change your genes, right? So that's the main issue. The problem is that in our genes, there are issues that cause us to die earlier than we otherwise would have. Because after all, remember, genes when God made human beings, God needed it for that. So what's this problem with the genes? Well, the genes are molecules inside the nucleus of our cells. Okay, so this is from the core, the nucleus, and you open that up, and it's a code, the DNA that we have, the genes are part of the code of the cells that we have. The instructions to tell us our cells what to do. That's why, you guys have similarities to your parents, right? Because they pass their genes to you, right? So the instructions in their cells about how to make your hair, your eyes, things like that will pass to you. So it's like a language. It's like a language of different letters. And one single cell in our body is more complicated than the city of New York. Like, you ever been to Europe? It's a very big place. Lots of things happening, but one single cell is more complicated than that. So you require a lot of information, right? Lots of information is required. Right? How much information? About 3 billion letters worth of information. To give you an idea, how much is 3 billion? It's a big number. I mean, there are 8 billion people on Earth. 3 billion letters. Okay, it's a lot of letters. The Bible, the English Bible that we have has 3.1 million. So this is 3 billion. Okay, look at how many letters you have in the Bible, right? How much more information is in your cell? Every single one of the cells. It's amazing design that God has made. Now, as we grow, and as your cells die and they need to be replaced, the cells have to divide, right? And they have to make new ones. So that means that information, all 3 billion letters have to be copied, right? Okay. So imagine you're to copy an entire Bible. How many mistakes do you think you would make? You're copying this Bible from Genesis all the way to Revelation. How many mistakes? This you try to type it. How many typos would you have? I mean, you'd be pretty good if you could get one typo per book, okay? But it'll be 66, right? How many more? Okay, maybe some of you are really good typists, maybe less. But then you can get some errors, right? So what's going to happen when the cell tries to copy 3 billion letters, right? Because every time the cell divides, it's going to make mistakes, right? Right? Okay, now when God made it perfect, everything was fine. But after sin, our bodies have been corrupted, and then mistakes started happening, right? Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve had no limitations, but Jesus perfect, just like it could look. But for us, it's not the same. How many mistakes do you think we make? Well, scientists estimate about 1 every 1 billion letters. That's pretty amazing, right? Only one mistake for every billion letters. What an amazing machine. They have amazing design. But hold on, we have 3 billion letters, right? For one cell. So what happens when one cell divides? On average of 3 mistakes. Right? And how many cells do we have? We have about 30 trillion cells. So I'm sorry to tell you, you guys are making mistakes all the time. Me too. Me included. We're making mistakes all the time. That's part of life. Now, thankfully, our body has a mechanism for correcting these mistakes. Okay. But it's not perfect. Sometimes a mistake doesn't get corrected. And that's why we get diseases like cancer. If you live very healthy, you try to avoid a lot of diseases, eventually, cancer are part of the most common things that get us, right? This is a study done in 2017. Most cancers, cancer mutations are due to random DNA copy mistakes. So some cancers are due to other factors. So yeah, you smoke and do other things that damage your cells. But most of the time, it's a random mistake. It's a copy mistake. So no wonder then that human lifespan is a limit, right? Because our bodies, that we accumulate these mistakes over time, and eventually it cannot last forever. But that's okay for us as Christians because we know this body is not ours forever. God's going to give us a new body, right? The new spiritual body will go to heaven, and there are no mutations about. Okay. So, but some people will say, well, that's okay because we can put our hope in evolution. So some people who don't believe in God, they say, well, over time, evolution will correct these mistakes. Like, that's how evolution works, right? Mutation and natural selection. So evolution, they will say that, well, okay, don't worry, because I guess you guys have mistakes, but maybe future generations, that as the human race progresses, will get rid of these mistakes. But here's the problem. So they've actually studied this in 2010. They did a study on mutations that are passed generation to generation. Now, what I told you just now about mutations that occur in our bodies, not all of them gets passed on, right? Because if I have a mutation on my hand or in my brain or whatever, that's just me. But if the mutations in the sperm or egg that's passed on to the next generation, that's what the problem is. So they're trying to study how much of our mutations get passed on to the next generation. And this is important, right? To see if our future generations will be affected by these mutations. This is what the study, the author said. The fundamental requirement for the maintenance of a species' genetic integrity and long-term viability or survival is the loss of being fitness by recurring for the materials of harmful mutations. Each generation must be balanced by the removal of such mutations by natural selection. So there are a lot of big words there. Okay, let me translate. so what all he's saying is that, look, if you're going to have mutations passed on to the next generation, at the very minimum, you have to have a way to get rid of all the bad ones, right? Because if you can't get rid of them, if the bad ones keep accumulating, then the species will die. End of story, right? Because you get more and more bad ones over time. Eventually, they destroy all the good information, and the species will die. This is a fundamental requirement. Okay, and before the studies were done, because before we couldn't study this, we didn't know enough about this, but geneticists, even in the 1950s, so this is a Nobel Prize winning geneticist, Dr. Mueller, he said, mutation rate in humans cannot be too high. The amount that we pass on the next generation, that it must be much lower than 0.5 and perhaps lower than 0.1. So 0.5 is like less than 1, right? It's half of 1. Okay. So in other words, on average, you cannot pass more than half a generation, a mutation to the next generation. Now, why does he say that? Why does it have to be so low? Let me try to illustrate. Imagine, just to make it simple, we have a tree for one generation to the next. Okay. Imagine if the mutation rate was 0.5 per generation, right? That means that every generation, half of the people are affected by mutations and half are not, right? So you can see here from one generation to the second one, there's a mutation there. Okay. And then the next generation, you will get the mutation gets passed through. So half of you can see half of the tree had a mutation, right? And then that half mutation gets passed on to the next generation. The problem is now you have a new generation, right? That means you get a new set of mutations as well. Right? Now, if you inherit the one from the generation before, you get a new set of mutations. So let's say diamond mutation. So originally you start with a triangle mutation, right? And now in the second generation, you get a new diamond mutation. In the third generation, you still pass on the diamond and triangle mutations. And then, guess what? You also add on additional mutations. You see how, like, every generation, if the rate is only half, in other words, only half the population is affected every generation, over time, it accumulates, right? In the first generation, you get 50%. The second generation, it's a higher percentage of the population gets affected, and the next one, even more, right? So even half, even if it's just 0.5, it's already too hard for the human body to handle. Because natural selection cannot get rid of it, right? Because unless you select out everybody, because there's nobody left that has a pristine genome, a pristine DNA anymore. So that's why Dr. Mueller said back in 1950 that it must be perhaps lower than 1. If you have 0.1, that means that you have 10 people, only one of them get a mutation. That's okay, right? If you have 10 people, if 10 people only one get a mutation, that person gets selected out, he dies, but then the rest of the people, they have good genes that get passed on to the next generation. So that's the theory, but what does the reality show us? And they did studies. They found, this is what the result of the study. They found that, it's going to read here from the present results, an average newborn acquires a total of 50 to 100 new mutations that they put along. So it turns out it's not 0.1. It's not 0.5, it's 50 or 100 mutations, everybody. So, in other words, we're all mutants. Did you know that? You're a mutant, I'm a mutant. Right? Because you compare your genes to your parents, you have 50 to 100 more mutations than they do. Okay. And one day when you have kids, some of you that are not, that don't have kids yet, when you get older and you have kids, your kids will have 50 to 100 more mutations than you. Now, can natural selection get rid of these mutations? They can't, right? How do you select? Who do you select? Everybody has it, right? Everybody has these mutations. There's no one to select, right? Because that natural selection can only select from existing people, right? So if everybody has it, then there's no one to select. There's no good. There are no good mutation-free people to select from, right? So it turns out we're not evolving; we're actually devolving, right? So this is the conclusion of the researcher was very dark. Thus, the preceding observations have painted rather stark picture, right? And he actually said this: in just 2 or 3 centuries, we're going to have significant incapacitation. Yeah, so the population in very short time, we're going to be in trouble because we're accumulating all these bad mutations. This was a study that was corroborated by another study here down in England by Sanger. So in this one, they said that it's about, you can see here, the first direct whole genome measurement of human mutation predicts 60 new mutations. So the last study was 50 to 100, this one 60, so about the same goal, right? So basically, we're getting new mutations and lots more than we can handle. Right. So therefore, we're evolving. We're not evolving. We're all mutants. That's why one of the scientists said this. You know, why have we not died 100 times over? But do you know what he means by that? See, the idea is this, right? Based on what we know about the mutations accumulating, human race should have died within a few thousand, tens of thousands, 100,000 years, right? Within that period of time. But the problem is this: according to evolution, the human race has been around for 6 million years, right? Because according to evolution, we diverged from a common ancestor with chimpanzees 6 million years ago, right? And if that's really true, we should die 100 times over, right? Because the genes were deteriorated long before we got to here. So from here, we know 2 things. Number one is we didn't evolve, right? Evolution didn't happen. So that means that we must be created by God. Right? If evolution was true, we should be long dead, right? That's number one. Number two, God did not create us long time ago, right? If God created us millions of years ago, guess what? We would be long dead as well, because the effect of sin will affect our genes so much we get here today. But if God created only a few thousand years ago, the Bible says, then that's not a problem, right? The accumulation of mutations in the genome hasn't affected us that much. So evolution is not a hope, right? Evolution doesn't work. In fact, we're accumulating more and more mutations, right? If our hope is in the future generations, we're getting more and more mutations. So really, our hope for everybody is the resurrection. Now, some people believe in reincarnation, right? Some people say, well, yeah, you go through it. If you go through life and you have bad things happen to you, you're diseased, you're sick, that's okay. You have another hope in the future, in the next life, right? After you die, your soul goes into another body. Now, does that work? Well, hold on a second. If you die, you go to the next body. Guess what? That next body has more mutations. Right? So it doesn't work, does it? Yeah. It doesn't help you. You can make reincarnation. Even if it was true, it doesn't help you, right? Because eventually you run out of bodies, right? Because all the bodies actually accumulate more and more mutations over time. Of course, we know the Bible says that reincarnation is not true, right? In Hebrews 9, it is only for man to die once. After this is the judgment, right? So the after death, there is no reincarnation, right? So this is the life. This is the one life we have, a gift from God. And in this life, we must make a decision to believe that Jesus died for our sins so that we can have a hope of the resurrection. So resurrection really is the only hope. That is the reality. So can Google solve that? No. The only Jesus solves that. right? And that our hope is that will be changed in the moment when Jesus comes or when we die. The corruptible will put on incorruption. We'll have a new body, right? All the sicknesses, all the diseases we have will mean nothing because we'll have a new spiritual body. Now, as we're just reading though, in the First Peter, it says that there's this hope, right? But if you read, we go down to say about Jesus, whom you have not seen, you love. Though you now do not see him, yet believing in him, that we can have this hope. But so if we don't see him, how can we be sure? If we don't see him, how can we be sure? Well, God doesn't want us to be in doubt. So Jesus has provided us with proof, with evidence that that this resurrection, his resurrection really happened, and that this hope is a hope based on evidence. So I want to share with you 6 reasons why we should believe in Jesus' resurrection. 6 reasons why we should have hope in the resurrection. Okay. Number 1, the testimony of eyewitnesses. Resurrection is something that happened in history. So anything that happens in history should be verified by eyewitness testimony. That's the gold standard, right? Like, how do you know something happened in history? It's because somebody saw it happen. For example, have the Leafs ever won the Stanley Cup? Maybe not, right? Have you ever seen it? Have you ever seen the Leafs in the Stanley Cup? I hope you'll see it one day, but based on recent history, I'm not so sure. You know? But how do we know? Have they won the Stanley Cup before? Yeah, they did in 1967. They beat the Canadiens in 4-2. But there's no way for me to know that because those before. Okay, so some of you may have seen it, or some of you may hear somebody, but so how do we know? How do we know this happened? The only way to know is if someone saw it and reported it, right? There's simply no other way to know, right? You can't scientifically test it, right? Like there's no experiment I can do to see, did the Leafs win the cup? You know, I put the jersey, the test tube. Did this jersey ever have a Stanley Cup? No, the only way to know it is by historical, right? So that's how we determine historical truth. Okay, so how do we know that Jesus resurrected? Well, we have 4 accounts. We have Matthew, who was an eyewitness, right? He was one of the disciples who saw the things happen. With Mark, he was an assistant Apostle Peter, right? Peter was an eyewitness. Now, Mark may have been as well, but even if he wasn't, he was reporting from eyewitness testimony from Peter. Luke was a co-worker of the Apostle Paul, and he based his account on eyewitness testimony. You can read in Luke chapter 1, how he said that he got these accounts from people who saw it. And John himself was an eyewitness, right? John was an apostle, the beloved apostle of Jesus. So here we have eyewitness, the gospel is based on eyewitnesses. 2 of them are direct eyewitnesses, right? One of them is Mark is writing as an assistant of eyewitness, and then Luke was collecting from eyewitnesses. Now, is this good enough? What do you think? Is this good enough eyewitness? How would you know? Well, I think one more thing before I get to that. The important thing about eyewitness testimony is that it's something that can be verified. Like, for example, we read here from Luke chapter 3. Now, in the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar, Pontius Pilate being the governor of Judea, Herod being the tetrarch of Galilee, his brother Philip, tetrarch of Iturea and region of Trachonitis, and Lysanias, tetrarch of Abilene, while Annas and Caiaphas were high priests, the word of God came to John, the son of Zechariah. Now, why does Luke bother writing all these names? Aside from testing my English. Right? He writes it down because he wants you to know this is something that happened in history. This is something that happened in the time of these people, right? In this place. You can check it out if you want. Right? That's the value of eyewitness, right? If eyewitness doesn't write anything about where it happened, how it happened, something that has to be verified, then that wouldn't be useful, right? But that's the value of eyewitness account that we have within the Bible, right? So they wrote it down and said, this is what happened. Look, if you don't believe me, you can go check it out. Now, how good is this? How good is it having this amount of eyewitness testimony? Well, let's make a comparison. So this is Julius Caesar. right? He was, and he fought a very important war between 58 and 50 BC. Okay, so he would live just around Jesus' time, just before. And it was an important war because this was a war that brought him to fame. Like he fought in this area, he conquered a new region for the Roman people. Okay, so this is the Roman Empire at that time, right? And it was what led him. So he was this part here. So the war was up in this part here. So you can see that the whole western part of the empire was because of his military success. So at the time, Rome was a republic, right? But after he won the battle, he became famous and popular, and he actually became a king. So that was how Rome became an empire instead he became an emperor, right? So let's compare the two things, right? The two events. So Julius Caesar's Gallic Wars, we're talking about Julius Caesar, who's the eventual dictator of the Roman Republic, the emperor. It was a war that was fought over 8 years, over half a year, and it was a key event that led to the creation of the Roman Empire. We compare that to Jesus' ministry, right? What's Jesus' ministry? Well, Jesus was a carpenter of Galilee, right? He's not a powerful political figure. He had a 3-year ministry among the Jews, right? A relatively small, obscure part of the Roman Empire. And it was a key event of the birth of Christianity in a small Roman province called Judea. Now, of these two events, which one do you expect to have more eyewitness testimony surviving to today? I mean, if you were running a newspaper or if you were having a news agency in that time, which news would you be covering? Who would you be sending your reporters? Yeah, I think so, right? That's the headline news, right? Like I think the Jesus will be like back pages, probably like somewhere down the very end of your website. If you have a website, not that important. Look, the big news: Julius Caesar conquering this and that. Well, how much eyewitness testimony do we have of that important event in Roman history? How many eyewitness accounts do you think that we have? Any guess? Good. Millions. One. There's only one. And guess who wrote it? Julius Caesar himself. Right, only one. That one account written by Julius himself. No other eyewitness testimony. Now, let me ask you: does any historian doubt that Julius Caesar was the emperor of Rome and that he fought in Gallic Wars? No historian doubts it. Because according to the standards of ancient testimony, to have one eyewitness is already amazing. Most of the time, you don't have any eyewitness. What you have is people wrote down something, and somebody else saying, "Oh yeah, I remember reading that guy reading something," and then, "Oh yeah, I remember." So it's like a second hand, third hand, right? To have an eyewitness account is incredibly valuable. It's very rare in ancient history. So, how good is the testimony that we have about Jesus? It's very good. In fact, best in history. Like I would say that Jesus is the best attested, the most well, as far as the life and career, what Jesus did, what happened in his life. There's no other historical figure in history that's better documented. So number one, eyewitness testimony. But it's not just the fact that we have eyewitness testimony, powerful eyewitness, more powerful than for any other historical figure. But it's the nature of the message. What message did they communicate? Okay, so if you read the Gospels, you see something like this, right? But whoever slaps you on the right cheek, turn the other cheek also, right? Turn the other cheek, right? Love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Do good to those who hate you. Pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you. Children, how hard it is for those who trust in riches, go into the kingdom of God. But don't trust in your riches, but trust in God. A servant is not greater than his master. If they persecute me, they also persecute you. So what was their message? Really, you guys love your enemies, turn the other cheek, right? People are evil against you, don't fight back. Don't trust in money, right? Like the life of the goal of is not to get money in this life. And join me so that you can be persecuted. What kind of message is that? Well, it's a wonderful message. Why? Because by believing Jesus, even though you may suffer in this life, you will have the resurrection. You will have eternal life. Something more valuable than anything you could ever imagine in this life. That's why you don't need to trust in these riches. That's why it's okay for people persecute. That's why it's okay that you have enemies. You can still love them. In fact, you want your enemies to change so that they can also follow Jesus too, because you have this wonderful hope of the resurrection. If that wasn't the reason, why did they have this message? Right? If people sometimes claim, well, yeah, yes, you have my eyewitness testimony, but maybe they made it up. Maybe they were trying to fool you. Well, for what? What did they gain? Right? What kind of message did they give? It's one thing they said, hey, join me, give me lots of money, and then, guess what? You'll be promised eternal life. Okay. That makes more sense, right? But what kind of message, right? Based on the nature of the message, we know that they must have had the hope of the resurrection. And then number 3, the third reason, the testimony of Josephus. Who is Josephus? Josephus was a Jewish historian that lived between AD 37 and 100. So he was born 4 years after Jesus was born. So he wasn't an eyewitness, but he was living at that time for sure. And he would have grown up talking to people who saw Jesus, right? Right, he was very close to that time. He was born in Jerusalem. He was a Jewish commander of the city of Galilee, of the town of Galilee. Okay, so he was an important figure in Jewish politics. But he defects to the Romans in AD 67. So in AD 67, the Romans came to invade, right? And he saw the Romans. He thought, well, we're not going to be able to encounter them. So he gives himself up. He betrays people. So he defects to the Romans when they came to destroy Jerusalem, to destroy the Jewish nation. And then, he went under Roman patronage and he started to write books of history. So I have here one of those books. So this is the works of Josephus. You can see how big it is. And this is only part of it too. Like this is very big, lots and lots of, he wrote lots of things. And he was well published because he was supported by Roman government. So there are many copies of his books are made. So that's why we still have copies of this book today. Now, why do I mention Josephus? Because, he's a Jew, right? He's not a Christian. He's under Roman government. I remember the Roman government at the time persecuted Christians. But in this book, he wrote something very interesting. This is in the book 18. So this is how big the book is. There's 18 books already there. And then chapter 3, he said this. Now there was about this time Jesus, a wise man, if it be lawful to call him a man, for he was a doer of wonderful works, a teacher of such men as received the truth with pleasure. He drew over to him both many of the Jews and many of the Gentiles. He was the Christ. And when Pilate, at the suggestion of the principal men among us, had condemned him to the cross, those that loved him at first did not forsake him, for he appeared to them alive again the third day, as the divine prophet had foretold. These and 10,000 other wonderful things concerning. And the tribe of Christians, so named after him, are not extinct at this day. He confirms the details about what the gospel books said, right? Including, for example, this man Jesus, that he did miracles, right? Wonderful works, right? That he was the Christ, and then that Pilate was the one that condemned him because of the urging of the crowds to the cross. And not only that, not only was he crucified, but later he became alive. He came back from the dead. Right? Now, why would he write that if that didn't really happen? Right? By the way, it wasn't even the main thing of this book. Right? If you read this book, this is a very small paragraph. Right? You have to really look closely to find it somewhere. It's not the main thing for his book because he's not a Christian, right? If it's a Christian, of course, we would put it in we'll put it as a headline. Right? Look, Jesus came back from the dead. but he wasn't a Christian, so for him, it's just something that happened in history. And he wrote it down, and it was a small part of his book, right? By the way, I think it's kind of funny what he said at the very end, right? Notice this, is that the tribe of Christians, so named from him, are not extinct at this day. It's as if he's wishing, right? These Christians, time for you guys to go away, right? It's time for you to go extinct already, He thought of Christianity as one of those movements that will eventually go extinct, right? Because he's not a movement. So why did he write that Jesus did these things and he came back from the dead? Because it really happened. Because it really happened. If it didn't happen, there's no reason to write. By the way, later in the book, this is book 18, right? In book 20, he actually mentioned something, a small detail, not about Jesus directly, but about Jesus' family. So he says here, if you read the red part there, the brother of Jesus was called Christ, whose name was James, and some others, and these people were still. So he talked about the martyrdom of Jesus' brother, right? Jesus' brother James eventually became a believer. And then, so here, he made another mention about, oh yeah, this guy, Jesus, his brother was stoned, that he was persecuted, and he was martyred. So he mentioned these as historical events, things that really happened. I mean, again, why does he put that in, right? What's the point of putting this extra detail in there? Unless this is something that really happened in history, Jesus really is a historical figure, and his brother really existed, for example. Some people say this. Some people say, well, how could, there's no way Josephus wrote this, because, I mean, if he had seen it, why did he believe, right? Some people say that I can't, if Josephus really saw what happened and he really reported, why did he believe? Well, actually, we have similar examples today. This is a Jewish Orthodox rabbi. He called Pinchas Lakim, right? He's someone that he was Jewish, and he investigated the Jesus, right, as a Jewish person. What's his conclusion? I accept the resurrection of Jesus not as an invention of the community of disciples, but as a historical event. Right? So he says, look, as a Jew, he says that, look, I looked at history, I studied it, I looked at historical evidence. Yes, Jesus rose from the dead. But did he become a Christian? No, he didn't. He said that, oh, well, Jesus came back from the dead, but that was for the Christians. Right? So you Christians follow the resurrected Jesus, but me, I still follow the God of it. It's very sad that he didn't believe. Right? But again, that's the whole point. Like, just because you realize that Jesus came back from the dead, you still have to make a choice. Right? And he made a choice, sadly, not to really follow Jesus. And it seems like Josephus did the same. Right? Even though he knew about the historical reality of Jesus came back from the dead, but he did not give his life to Jesus. Very unfortunate. But yet, he left that testimony. Now, why did he do it? Because it happened. Number 4, the conversion of Jews in Jerusalem. Okay, and this is something that we read not only in the Bible, but also, so this is also in the secular record. So this is Israel in Jesus' time, right? You can see here, do you see Jerusalem here? Right? Jerusalem. Here, right? Jerusalem is part of Judea. Okay. Okay, and at that time, there was a Roman historian, Tacitus. So he lived 8050s to about 120. So again, he lived just a couple of decades after Jesus was resurrected. But he was a historian, but also he rose to become a senator, right? So senator is the most powerful post in the Roman Empire under the emperor. So you have emperor, of course, number 1. Senator is equal. So he had access to the imperial records to write his books, right? So he was a historian, but he had access to all the records of the empire to write what happened, right? So he knows what happened before. Now, what does he say in these historical books? Now, again, he's not a Christian, so he's not concerned specifically with Jesus. But he was writing about the different emperors, right? Okay, and one of them was Nero, Emperor Nero. Okay, and this is what he wrote about Nero in his Annals. He said, Nero fastened the guilt and inflicted the most exquisite tortures on a class hated with abominations called Christians by the populace. right? So he wasn't going to talk about Christians, but he had to talk about Christians because he had to mention what Nero did to the Christians, right? Okay. And then because he had to talk about it, he had to explain to his readers, so who are these Christians, okay? So he says Christus, so this is the Latin spelling of Christ, from whom the name has its origin, suffered extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hand of one of our procurators Pontius Pilate. And the most mysterious superstition, thus checked for the moment, again broke out, not only in Judea, the first source of the evil, but even in Rome. Okay, so, and Mafia Victor was added to their death, so Nero cruelly killed many Christians. So Tacitus was explaining why did he do it, or what he did, and then to explain to the readers what he was doing, he explained who Christians were. And he confirmed what the Bible said, right? That Jesus existed in history, and not only that, but he was crucified, right? The extreme penalty under Roman rule is crucifixion, right? So Jesus was crucified, right? Why would he write that? Because he saw it in the imperial records, right? Right? Why would it be in the imperial records? Because it really happened, right? Remember, the Romans had no reason to make up things for Christians. Like they're against the Christian. In fact, they wanted to put out the Christian because the Christians were refused to worship the Roman emperor. So why would they have in the imperial records that Jesus existed in history, that he really died on the cross, unless that's historical reality? And notice what happened. After Jesus died on the cross, it says that this superstition, right, because they think that Christianity is not a good belief, so they call it superstition, again broke out. Now in Judea, the first source of the evil by evil. So what that is saying is that after crucifixion, for some reason, in the very place where Jesus was killed, Christianity rose up again. Now why? I mean, your leader was just cruelly killed, right? Your leader was crucified for everybody to see that, look, you guys are worshiping the wrong guy, right? If you want to worship him, you want to follow him, you're going to end up the same way. But guess what? In the very place where people saw that happen, people rose up and said, no, we're going to continue to believe this. Why? Well, I think the most reasonable explanation is because they saw Jesus come back from the dead. Right? Otherwise, why would they believe it? I mean, it's one thing to say, if Jesus that died on the cross in Jerusalem, and people like somewhere far away in Spain or in Africa, they started believing because they didn't know that what happened to Jesus, right? But the very place where Jesus died on the cross, why would you believe it there unless you know that Jesus rose? In fact, if we read it in Acts when the disciples were preaching, right? This is what they said. This is what Peter said. Men of Israel, hear these words. Jesus of Nazareth manifested by God to you by miracles, wonders, and signs which God did through him in your midst, as you yourselves also know. Hold on a second. You're preaching to a group of people, right? In Jerusalem, in a big city, right? How can you be sure that you're talking to these people and that they know Jesus did these miracles? How can you be sure? Right? And by the way, it worked, right? Because at the end, people said more than 3,000 souls were added to it, right? 3,000 people believed, right? And this is something Tacitus talked about, right? Tacitus said that superstition reignited there. So how can Peter be so certain? He's preaching and the people would know that Jesus did these miracles. Well, I think we have to understand a bit of geography. So this is Jerusalem in Jesus. Now, this is old city of Jerusalem, and I want to point attention to the scale. Here, 300 meters. So the whole city is only about 1 or 2 square kilometers. If this is 300 meters, how big is this? Right? It's a very small place by modern city standards. It was big in terms of population. A lot of people live there and they squeeze into a small space. But the actual space is quite small, which means what? Basically, when things happen there, everybody knows it. Right? And what things happen there? We read about in John, for example, in Jerusalem, there was a sheep by the sheep gate, a pool, which is called in Hebrew Bethesda. right? And there was a man there that had an infirmity for 38 years, right? He was sick there for 38 years, and Jesus healed him, right? Jesus said to him, rise up, take up your bed and walk. And by the way, now we know where that is. Eh? We know where the Bethesda is. So this is the pool of Bethesda. So the pool of Bethesda today. They after digging it out, the archaeologists can reconstruct what it looked like before. And just like the Bible said, it had 5 porches. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the 5 porches there. Okay, so this is the pool of Bethesda that was recorded in the Bible. And this is right here. Oh, sorry, this is it's actually here. I'm sorry, it should be this one. I have the wrong arrow, so it should be this one. So it's right here. Now imagine if you had if there was a man there that lay there sick for 38 years, right? And every day you live in the city, you walk around, you go shopping, you go out and see, you come and see. Every day you see that guy, right? Oh, there's that guy again. You know, there's that guy again. If that guy was really healed, would you notice? Can somebody call you and tell you, oh, by the way, you know what? That guy was healed, and all you have to do is just go by there. What do you mean? Are you still there? So it was a small place, and any of the miracles that Jesus did could be very hard. Another one is that man was born blind, right? In John chapter 9, and Jesus told him to go wash in the pool of Siloam. Okay. And this is the pool of Siloam. We can use translation today. This is what it looked like at that time. And again, same thing, right? So this is here was what I said before about pool of Bethesda when man was still ill for 30 years still. And here was the guy who was born blind. He went there to wash and he was healed. Again, same thing. Imagine there's a guy who was born since birth, right? So that means that, and he's been begging for people to help him. So that must be what? 20, let's say he's 20 years old. So 20 years, right? In 20 years, he's been begging around the city. Every day you see this guy who's blind begging. And suddenly somebody says, hey, guess what? He's healed. Would you be able to verify that that really happened? Would you know? Yes. So that's why when Peter said, and that's why when Jesus went to heal Lazarus, for example, you read here in John chapter 11, when Jesus came, he found that he had already been in tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles away. So Jesus went to Bethany, 2 miles away from Jerusalem, to raise Lazarus from the dead. And what was after that? What was the reaction of the Pharisees, the leaders of the Jews? It says, if you read the red part there in John chapter 11 at the end, if we let him alone like this, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away our place and nation. Why would everyone believe in him? Because he was doing these things so close to Jerusalem, right? And everybody was passing through Jerusalem. They're gonna know. Guess what? Yeah, there's this guy Lazarus. He raised from the dead. Oh, really? Can I check it out? Sure. 2 miles away from the city, right? Just go up there. You'll see him. You'll see him and his sisters. You'll talk to people and say, look, yeah, I saw him. I saw him in the tomb. I saw him dead. He was in the tomb for 4 days. And Jesus came and called him out and he walked there. Right? That's why they believe, they realize that, hey, if we don't get rid of this Jesus guy, we're all in trouble because everybody's believing. Right? And that's why Peter, when he was preaching in Jerusalem, he said, look, you know what happened, right? You can see it, right? I told you about all these things that happened. You can check it out. Go check that guy who was paralyzed. Go check that guy who was born blind. Go check Lazarus who was raised from the dead. And that's why many people there believed, right? Remember, the Jews were taught from birth, never ever worship any human being, right? Never worship any idol, only worship the true God. Right? In fact, they're so stubborn that the Romans tried to change them, right? The Romans tried to say, look, we're going to kill you, we're going to harm you unless you follow our Roman ways, unless you worship our Roman gods, unless you worship Roman emperor. They refused. They'd rather die. So why do all these people talk from birth that they only should worship the true God and never worship anyone? And even willing to give their lives why would they suddenly all say, look, oh wow, I'm gonna worship this guy Jesus? Why did they change? Why did they do that? And why did they do it? Why did they do it in the very place that Jesus was crucified, where they can see the defeat, the ultimate defeat of Jesus Christ? The only reasonable explanation is that Jesus was human. He overcame that. And they said, look, even though we've been taught not to worship a man, this is not a man. He's not just a man. He is also the Son of God. And that's the only logical explanation. So a couple more. Number 5, Paul's First Corinthians eyewitness power. So in AD 55, about 22 years after the resurrection, Paul wrote this in First Corinthians. Okay, he talked about how Jesus was rose from the dead. He was seen by people. Right, he rose on the 3rd day. He was like according to scriptures, was seen by Cephas, as Peter, and by 12. And after that, he was seen by over 500 brethren at once, of whom the greater part remained to the present. And then he was seen by James, his brother, and the apostles, and so on. So the key part I want to mention here is that he was Paul said he was seen by over 500 Christians at once, and not only that, but most of them. So that means more than 250, right? So it's quick math. More than 250 people were still alive at the time, 22 years after the resurrection, that could testify that, yeah, I saw Jesus rise from the dead. Now, there's a couple of possibilities, really. Either this is what really happened, and that's why Paul claimed it, right? Or Paul was bluffing, right? Are there any other possibilities? Right? Either he's bluffing, like he said, he knows it didn't happen, and he's just trying to tell people that it happened, or it's reality, right? It's a truth. Now, let's think about this. Could he be bluffing? Is it possible he was bluffing? Well, he's talking to people in Corinth, right? So maybe Corinth is pretty far away from Jerusalem, right? So is he hoping that, I can tell you guys about, look, all these people that live in Jerusalem, that saw him happen, they're still alive, by the way. He didn't have to say that, right? He could say that, oh, they all died, so you don't have to repeat it. So you just have to trust me. They're still alive. Could he be bluffing? Is he hoping that they won't? What do you guys think? Well, there's a big problem. Because according to Jewish law, all the Jews, I remember when Paul was preaching in different places, he often went to the synagogue, right? So he preached to the people who are Jews who live in other parts of the Roman Empire, like in Corinth. And what does Jewish law say? In Deuteronomy 16, 3 times a year, all your males shall appear before the Lord your God in the place which he chooses, at the feast of the unleavened bread, at the feast of weeks, the feast of tabernacles, and they shall not appear before the Lord empty-handed. The Jewish law, the Old Testament law says, look, you have to go to the temple 3 times a year. Right? And people did from all parts of the Roman Empire. And that's why, remember, when in the Pentecost, right, when the Holy Spirit came down, there were people from all parts of the empire, right? And that's why when they were spoken tongues in different languages, there were people who understood it. Because all these people, they follow the law, they're faithful Jews, they live in other parts of the world, but they say, you know what, just like, a lot of Chinese people go back to China to 10 years, same kind of idea, that they will all go back to Jerusalem, because that's what God said, look, you got to come back to the temple in 2 years, okay? And that's why there were people from Parthians, Medes, Elamites, Mesopotamia. Where are all these places? Let's look at the map, right? Look at where they came from. There were people here in Jerusalem. People came all the way from the Parthian Empire, from Judea, all the way from Rome, right? And Corinth would be here, right? Corinth would be here. Now, when Paul was speaking to the Corinthians, do you think that some of the people in Corinth, would they visit Jerusalem? Right? Certainly they would. Right? Certainly they would. Right? So would they be able to call Paul's bluff? Yes, they can. Okay. So Paul could not have been bluffing, right? Because Paul was bluffing, they were being called in a second, right? The next time they go to Jerusalem, they say, oh yeah, 250 people. I gotta at least find one, right? Like this 2-kilometer size city, 250 people, you gotta be able to give me a couple of names, I go check it out. Right? So there's no way that Paul was bluffing. And by the way, even if they don't want to go check it out, so first of all, in Rome, one of the things that Romans are famous for is their roads, right? this is actually a picture taken like in modern times, right? So there's some of the roads survive to today. Romans were well known for the transportation, right? So if you really want to go somewhere, let's say you want to go to Jerusalem, you want to check things out, you can go there. It's not a problem. Transportation was very good. And even if you don't want to go there personally, you can send a letter to a relative in Jerusalem, right? Because the Romans had a very advanced postal system called the Glucius Publius. The development of Rome from a small city state in the vast empire, embracing most of the known world, brought with it the necessity for reliable and speedy communications, right? So they had this system, the most, according to Encyclopedia Britannica, the most highly developed postal system of the ancient world. They could cover 170 miles or 270 kilometers in a day and night. Sounds very close, actually. So all you have to do, if you don't want to go there, check it out. You just send somebody, send a letter, right? Say, hey, look, and whatever, and Mary in Jerusalem, can you check this out for me? This guy said that Jesus came back from the dead. Can you find it out for me? And by the way, if you were at that time, if you were listening to Paul and you weren't sure, would you want to check it out? Or would you say, oh yeah, I don't need to check it out, I'm just going to believe anyways? What's the price of believing in those days? Your life. Right? Before you give up your life, would you check it out first, make sure it's true? Especially it's so easy to do, right? You can travel there, right? The traveling is very easy. You can send a post there, right? You can ask a relative to go for you. So there's no way that Paul was bluffing, right? Because that bluff would be Paul in a second. So what's the only alternative? Is that he was telling the truth. And that means that we can be confident that Jesus really came back from the dead. Okay, well, so and last but not least, the apostles' insistence, despite the threat of torture and death, that Jesus had risen and been seen by them. Right, so we just read about Nero, right? Nero, he persecuted the Christians, and very cruel persecution too. If you read the very bottom here, they were covered with skins of beasts. They were torn by dogs and perished, or nailed to crosses, or doomed to flames and burned to serve enlightened illumination. So why cover with skin of beasts? Because they have these attack dogs, right? When they go hunting dogs that hunt wild beasts. But a hunting dog wouldn't usually fight humans. But they will cover Christians with skins of animals, so that these dogs will attack Christians, thinking that these are the wild animals. It was a very cruel way of killing them. You should be literally torn to pieces by these attack dogs, right? Or nailed to cross, right? It's a terrible, long, agonizing death. Or they're burned, right? And all the Christians did that, were willing to go to death for that lie. The disciples and the believers were all willing to suffer death despite and still believe in Jesus. Why did they do that? Here, we see it's not just Tacitus. And Suetonius talks about how Claudius persecuted Christians, or how, and also mentions how Nero persecuting Christians. Pliny the Younger, one of the governors of the Romans, this is what he said about Christians. What did he do? This is the procedure. I interrogated these. These you see they're really Christians. Those who confess, I interrogated a second time, a third time, threatening them with punishment, and those who persisted, I ordered executed. They give you 3 chances. Okay, are you a Christian? So, Charles, are you a Christian? Are you sure? Your answer is very important. I'll give you a second chance. Are you a Christian? You're sure? Okay, last chance. Are you a Christian? Okay, so now you're dead. So now you're dead. Now after you admit 3 times and you're a Christian, you'll be dead. And that's what the Pliny did, right? But those who deny, let's say that you were scared and you said, oh, and you backed out. Said, oh, yes, no, I was just kidding. I'm not really a Christian. Those who deny that the world had been Christians, when they invoke the gods in words dictated by me, offer prayer with incense and wine to your image, and moreover, curse Christ. These I thought you should discharge. So it's not just you say no and that's it. Okay, he says, okay, you say you're not, then I'm gonna make you worship our God. So you're gonna worship the Roman guy in front of me, and then you have to curse Jesus to prove that you're not a Christian. And the emperor wrote back to him. The emperor wrote back to him and said, "Oh, yeah, you observe proper procedure, dear Pliny. Yeah, you're doing the right thing. This is what you should do to these evil Christians, according to the Roman emperor." Right? So that was what's happening. That was what's happening in that time. So during that time of persecution, of death, why did Christians insist? Why did the disciples themselves insist that, I'm still going to believe? Right? After all, if they had lied, right? If what they saw wasn't really, if they didn't really see Jesus rise from the dead, all they had to do is say, "Oh no, I was kidding. Yeah, I didn't really see it. I just made it up." And they would save their lives, right? Right? Because notice the Romans, they weren't going to kill you anyway, right? If you gave in, if you denied Jesus, they let you go. So why did the disciples, despite that, insist that yes, I'm still going to follow Jesus, because they really saw Jesus kind of. Because they did so, and that's why we see the disciples die in many different parts. All the disciples, except for John, died at martyr's death. They were killed for their faith. John was exiled in Patmos and eventually. So there we have it, 6 reasons why we should believe in Jesus' resurrection. So I pray that this will encourage you, and I encourage you to also for your own personal faith. Like next time that if you go through some tough times in life, right? Remember we read in 1 Peter that there will be some trials, right? There will be some difficult times in this life, but we have a hope in the resurrection waiting for us. So when we go through some tough times in life, I pray that you will remember the evidence that Jesus left for us, that He really rose from the dead. And may this also help you remember these so we can share, right? Next time your friend asks you, why should I believe? You say, look, we have eyewitness testimony. We have people who actually saw it happen, right? And why would they write the message that they wrote? Read it, right? I challenge you to challenge your friends, say, look, read it, read the gospel message. These are not people who are trying to gain money. They're not trying people to gain fame, right? These are people who really saw Jesus rise from the dead. So they're willing to give up everything because they know that they have a hope in the resurrection, right? You can share with them that it's not just the Christians. The people like Josephus who are not believers, but yet they faithfully reported because what really happened. They reported what happened, right? So why would they report it unless this reality is reality? Why would the Jews were in Jerusalem, in the very place where Jesus was crucified? Why would they change their mind and embrace Jesus, especially when they're taught from birth not to worship any man, unless they really saw Jesus resurrected, unless they saw those people? Why would Paul dare to challenge the people in Corinth? Look, people are there in Jerusalem. You can go check it out. Why? How does he dare to say that? And it couldn't have been a bluff, because if he had bluff, then people would find out right away. Translation was so good, people can go there, you can send a post there. And last but not least, why the disciples? Why were they willing to give their life for following Jesus, unless they realize that yes, Jesus rose from the dead, so I can rise, right? People may lie, right? But they're not going to die for their own life. People may lie, but they may lie to make other people die, but they're not going to lie and then cause their own death. Okay, so thank you for your attention today. My point is this, that when you read John chapter 11, Jesus said to her, I'm the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? I pray that your answer is a very clear yes, because we have evidence. And I pray that means that we should change the way that we live, right? Because he is risen, because we know that he loves us, and he overcame death for us. That we ought to no longer live out for ourselves, but for him to die for us. So maybe this encourage you in your faith and encourage you to live your life for Jesus, and share your faith so that others can know the evidence and have hope in the resurrection. Let's pray. Dear Father, we thank you for this time. We thank you for what you have done. We thank you for everything that you have done, especially that you have given your son Jesus to die for us. Thank you for giving us the hope of the resurrection. In this world, we know that the world lacks hope. Because everywhere we turn, we know that one day, everything that we have, everything that we see, everything that we value will end. Because this life is not, this world is not forever. This life is not. But you have promised something much better, something that is incorruptible, that will never go away, that will never disappear. That's our inheritance in heaven, our eternal life in heaven. Thank you, Lord, for giving us that. Thank you for blessing us. Help us, Lord, to live a life holding on to that faith and share that faith with others. We live our lives for you, just like you live, die on the cross. Gave our lives. So we pray and we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.